afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
We'll look at our algebraic expression. Good afternoon, learners. Today you're with me, Mr. Bandara Ideals. In the next 30 minutes of this physics session, look at its PHY, that is physics grade 11. Last time we were dealing with the issue of pressure, and we try to move a step further today, and we try to look at the properties of waves. We look at the properties of waves. Properties of waves. Now, of course, we are looking at the general wave, okay? We'll look at the general wave. And I'll start by asking, what do you understand by wave? Okay, I think I know some of you have been to a lake or a river. Yeah, if you stand at a distance, I think you'll be able to see on top of water, when water is moving, you'll be able to see something like bumpy. You get a point? So those that you see when water is moving, those are what we call the waves. Okay, now, so in order for a wave to be formed, meaning there's a transfer of energy, okay, from one place to another, because you see that there will be a change as water is flowing. You'll be able to see something like this, meaning there's energy is being transferred from this point to the other point. We can also give a practical example of a rope. You try to do a rope like this, meaning energy will be transferred. I think you'll see something like this. Let's assume someone is holding a rope here. If you try to do it like this, it will form something, meaning energy is being transferred from one point to another. So we can define a wave as a disturbance that moves energy from one place to another. We can define a wave as a disturbance. So to define a wave, please, you can take your books and copy. We define a wave. A wave is a disturbance that moves or transfers energy from one place to another. So you expect a disturbance, meaning a disturbance takes place at that particular point, meaning that disturbance that we have, meaning energy is being transferred from one point to another, and we refer to that as a wave. Now, let's try to move a step further. Of course, there are two different types of waves that we are going to look at today, and some of the waves that we are going to look at, the first one that we're going to look at is a transverse wave. We'll look at a transverse wave. Now, we'll still move as we look at there are two types of waves. There's a transverse wave, and the other wave that we're supposed to look at is longitudinal. Longitudinal wave. So basically there are two types of waves, but within these waves there are several, or there are many waves, okay? But we are looking at the key here. There are two types of wave, that is a transverse wave and a longitudinal wave. Now let's start looking at a transverse wave. Now, if a question were to ask, say, what do you understand by a transverse wave? Now, when you talk of a transverse wave, this is a wave where the vibration of particles vibrate, the vibration of particles do vibrate perpendicular to the direction of the wave, okay? So it's defined as the wave, it's defined as the wave in which the particles, in which the vibration is defined as the wave in which the particles, is defined as the wave in which particles vibrate perpendicular to the direction of the wave. So now, when it comes to the issue of transverse wave here, it has been defined as the wave in which particles vibrate perpendicular to the direction of the wave, meaning they vibrate at a right angle. I'll give an example on how a transverse wave can be described. For example, we do have this, of course, we do have this part here and this part. So we expect a transverse wave to be in this nature. Okay, so of course we do have this wave that we have here, and we describe this one, of course, as a transverse wave. Okay, due to not having enough space, let me just try. I hope you have copied the first part. Let me try to use the top part here. So you expect this part that we have here, the part that we have here is the direction of the wave, because you expect to move up and down, okay? So you expect this part as the direction of the wave. So expect the direction of the wave. This is the direction of the vibration here, because it's able to, then this wave is moving towards this place. This way where you expect the direction of the wave. So this is the direction of wave. Then this one, you expect the direction of the vibration, because expect it vibrates as it moves towards this side here. So expect this part to be the direction of the vibration. So you expect it to vibrate towards, again, you expect it to come this side. So at times a question can come, you define what a transverse wave, then you come up with a diagram to show that indeed this is a transverse wave. Learners out there, this is how I expect. You expect to draw a transverse wave in this nature, meaning we're trying to describe a transverse wave. So we have been told to say transverse wave is defined as a wave in which particles vibrate perpendicular to the direction of the wave. So they vibrate perpendicular, okay, at a 90 degrees. When I say perpendicular, meaning at 90 degrees. So meaning they're expected to vibrate in this way, but as they move towards the side. Let's try to move a step further and we'll try to look at the other part that we look at. We have described what a transverse. We look at longitudinal wave. Now, when it comes to longitudinal wave here, it's a wave in which the vibration of particles in this, okay, in which the particles vibrate parallel to the direction of the wave. This one is defined as the wave in which is defined as the wave in which the particles vibrate parallel to the direction of the wave. So, hope you are able to get the picture now. If you try to look at the difference between a transverse wave and a longitudinal wave, in this case here, particles will vibrate perpendicular or at a 90 degrees or at a right angle, okay, to the direction of wave. But in this case, when it comes to longitudinal waves, these particles will vibrate parallel to the direction of the wave. And I can give you an example of some of on how we can describe the type of wave where say they are parallel to the direction of the wave here. And I do have the diagram here, something like this. So now, so we expect this part that we have here direction of the vibration. Then of course this one is the direction of the wave. So this is what we have on how we can describe how longitudinal wave is. Of course here we can talk of practical example with, of course here there's a direction of vibration, meaning when there's a vibration you expect it to move towards this place where they have been compressed here at this point here. So you can see that there's this part where it is compressed and the other part that is compressed here, meaning this is where vibration is taking place. Of course we do have a direction of where this wave is moving. So I've given a practical example. We can talk of a spring can be described. If you try to eject the spring here, you expect such to happen. So nothing much to talk about longitudinal, but hope you have noticed the difference between a transverse wave and a longitudinal wave, because at times a question do come to say, what's the difference between a longitudinal wave and a transverse wave, or a transverse wave and a longitudinal? These are some of the differences that we have. The other one, it will vibrate perpendicular to the direction of the wave. The other one, parallel to the direction of the wave. Let's try to move a step further here. Now, of course, I've mentioned, so we do have the two types of waves. That is the main forms of wave that we have is the longitudinal and transverse wave. So under the transverse waves, we can give some of the examples of transverse waves. There's some of the examples of the transverse wave. We can give example of light waves. These are some of the examples, e.g. we've got light waves and or electromagnetic waves. I know some of you asked to say, what are electromagnetic waves? Don't worry, we'll get into details. We're going to learn about what electromagnetic waves that we do have what we call the X-ray. Those that fall under the electromagnetic waves. So these are some of the examples under transverse waves. Of course, there are many. You can give an example again of a rope. I think that is also an example of a transverse wave. Now, we try to move further and to also look at some of the examples of longitudinal waves. Longitudinal waves. So, under longitudinal waves, you expect waves such as, you can give an example of a spring or sound waves. So, a spring and sound waves, these are some of the examples of longitudinal waves. Now, let's try to move a step and we try to look at there are certain terms, because as where we are heading to, you find there are certain questions that we are supposed to calculate. Could be the speed, the period, or those. There are certain terms that are involved, in waves. So let's try to describe some of the terms that we use or define them. Okay, before we try to define some of these waves, let's try to come up with a longitudinal wave here. A transverse wave. Of course, this is a transverse wave that we have here. Of course, here, this is the direction of the wave. Of course, the direction of the vibration here. Now, there are some points that you need to know. At times, a question will come and ask you to say, what is this part? For example, they can say, what is this part? This part is what we call the crest. And the highest point of the wave is called the crest. Then we also have got this part here. It's called the trough. It's called the trough. Okay, which is the lowest point of a wave. Okay, then we also have got this part from this point to this point here. It's called the wavelength. It's given, this symbol as lambda, okay? So the moment you see this symbol, just know lambda, meaning we're talking about the wavelength, okay? So it's the distance from this point. So we can define wavelength as the distance between two successive crests, because there's a crest here, there's a crest here, okay? The distance between two successive crests, or the distance between two successive troughs. So I think it's fine, even this part here, okay? So we can call it the wavelength. Then we also have got this point, from this point to this point here. It's called the amplitude. This point is called the amplitude. Amplitude. So whatever that at times is possible, they can label to say A, B, C, D, okay? They say, can you name the parts here? Learners out there, you must know that this is a crest, this is a trough. What is wavelength here? The amplitude, you must know that. So let's go and try to move a step and try to now, we define exactly now the terms that we have. Hope you are copying. We do have the first part to say the amplitude. An amplitude. What is an amplitude? So an amplitude is the maximum displacement of a particle Amplitude is the maximum displacement of a particle from the resting position so that is an amplitude. We also have got what we call the wavelength. So wavelength, I did explain earlier on, is the distance between two successive crests. distance between two successive crests. So the distance between successive crests or troughs is fine. We also have got, which other term are we looking at? We have defined an amplitude, you must know. Then we also have got crest is the highest point. Is the highest point. Is the highest point of a wave. We also have got the trough. And the trough, sorry, is the lowest point. Point of a wave. So we are not done, but these are some of the I had to start first by trying to, after labeling what these parts are, then we defined them to say displacement, amplitude of wave is the maximum displacement of a particle from its resting position. Okay, from its from the resting position, from its resting position. Sorry, from its resting position. Then wavelength is the distance between two successive crests. And then a crest, hope you now know what a crest is, say is the highest point of a wave. Of course, we do have a wave that is the highest point, and a trough is the lowest point of a wave. So, hope you have copied the first part. We'll continue trying to define some terms. I think I've remained about 2 terms now that we need to define. Then we try to, let me wrap this part now. The other term we're supposed to look at, the period. The period. So, period of a wave. The period of the wave is the time for one complete vibration, or in other words you can say means the time it takes to make one wave, or time takes. Explain what we mean when we say one wave. Okay, then we also have got what we call the frequency, and the frequency of a wave is the number of complete waves produced per second. Number of complete waves produced per second. Now, so the first definition, say period of a wave is the time for one complete vibration of a particle, okay, or time takes to make one complete wave. What does it mean? For example, we'll give a practical example on this transverse wave. Now, for one complete wave that you have to know, meaning is from this point coming up to here. This is one complete wave, meaning it's a complete wave up to here. Not just moving up, this one up to here, it's a complete wave. Again, we move up to here, meaning of 2 complete waves. Okay? So, this is what it means. A period of a wave is a time for one complete vibration of particle, or time takes to make one wave. So, meaning what we have, we've got 2 waves here. Here up to here 1, then up to here we get 2. So, we do have 2 complete waves. Then there's the coming of gain of what we call the frequency. Frequency is the number of complete waves produced per second, number of complete waves produced per second. That is what we call frequency. Now, of course, there are some formula that we need to know under what we have learned here. For example, a period, the letter that we use when it comes to period, the symbol, let me say symbol, the symbol we use for period, we abbreviate capital letter T. Okay, so period, the symbol we use is T. So the moment you, as a physicist, when you just come across, when you're dealing with issues under, when it comes to physics, waves, just know when it comes to period, they ask about period. The moment you see T here, then just know we're talking about the period. So this is the symbol that we use. Then the units for period, the units for period is seconds, abbreviated as S. So I've talked about a symbol. There's a symbol T, meaning period. You're not supposed to write the complete word, just writing T in case, because there's a formula that is coming. So period, symbol use T. The units for period is seconds, which is S. Then there's also talk about frequency. Symbol. The symbol that is used for frequency is small letter f. Small letter f we use to describe frequency. So that is small letter f. Sorry for that. So that is f. Then units for frequency. Units for frequency, we use what we call hertz. Those are the units for frequency. So for example, you have been told, can you find the frequency? I don't expect you to write a lot of it. It's just written as H with a small letter Z. So for example, you have been told, can you find the frequency? Meaning, for example, you get your answers 2. So you write 2 hertz. Someone who's doing science will be able to know, say you're talking about frequency here. So those are the units you have to know. Then there's what we call again the wavelength. Wavelength, already I did explain to you the symbol that is used for wavelength. We use this symbol called lambda. This is the symbol that we use for frequency. Then the units for wavelength, it's meters, abbreviated as small letter m. So in case you have been told, can you find the wavelength, meaning you're trying to find the units, meaning whatever that you get to find the frequency, make sure that in this case that is the units that we use there as meters. Now we have defined what period is all about and frequency. Then I also gave you the symbol that we use and the units. You know, as a physics student, you have to make sure that you're very conversant when it comes to the issue of units. They are very, very, very important in whatever that we do. Okay, so under this we do have a formula that we're supposed to use. A frequency is equal to 1 over T. We know where F is equal to frequency. Okay, then T, we know that it's period. So under this formula, you're capable of trying to solve the frequency or period depending on what you have been given. Then there's also this expected, whereby I said V is equal to lambda frequency. This is the formula you're supposed to use, where V is equal to speed. Okay, then we do have this as well as this is what we call the wavelength. this is the wavelength. Then we do have this one as the frequency. So learners, these are the two formulas that you must know. I understand that you understand what speed is defined as. So we know speed is a distance traveled, by a wave in 1 second. That is what we define as speed. So V is equal to speed, then this one is wavelength, then this one frequency. So these are the formulas that next time when we meet, we'll try to look and apply. We're going to apply these two formulas that I have given to you. Please make sure that you go through and understand whatever that have been discussed. Be conversant with the issue of units. Try to describe what a transverse wave is and what is a longitudinal wave, and try to see the difference between a longitudinal and transverse wave. Also looked at the parts of Mr. Banda Ray Dales. Until next time.
Good afternoon, class. And these are
look at the algebraic expression.
good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock. Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at the algebraic expression.
Good afternoon, class. Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at the algebraic expression.
And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at the algebraic expression.
Good afternoon.
methods of cooking. Methods of cooking. Okay, so that's our topic for today. So before we look at the different types of methods, we are going to look at the reasons for cooking food. Why do we cook food? Okay, so the first reason is for easy digestion. Okay, so right, reasons for cooking food. Okay, so the first one, right, easy, for easy digestion. Okay, then the second, the food. Okay, again, to enhance the flavor or taste. Okay, again, we cook food in order to kill some of the microorganisms. Okay, microorganisms or germs. Okay, chain of food for eating. Usually it involves the application of heat. So for us to have our food cooked, we are supposed to apply the heat. Okay, then we'll look at the different types of cooking methods. Okay, different types of cooking methods. So initially we've got two of them. Okay, types of cooking methods. Okay, so we've got what we call the moist method of cooking. Moist method of cooking. Okay, methods of cooking. Now we are supposed to know which ones are under moist method of cooking and which one are under dry methods of cooking. Okay, examples that we are supposed to have on dry methods. When they say mention the two types of cooking methods, you are supposed to examples that I'm going to give under each one of the two that I've written on the board. Okay, so under moist method of cooking, we've got boiling method. Okay, then we've got steaming. Okay, parboiling. All these are under moist method. Got parboiling. Okay, then again we've got stewing. Okay, pressure cooking. Okay, so all those are under moist methods. Okay, then again we've got poaching. Even we've got poaching. Okay, then we've got slow cooking. Okay, so all these are examples of moist method. So moist method, it's a method of cooking whereby you use water, okay, and when you are cooking, most of the food in this method, they are supposed to be immersed in the water. Okay, so all these are the examples of moist method. Now we'll look at dry method. Okay, dry method of cooking. So these dry methods of cooking, the heat is being applied directly to the food. Okay, now we're supposed to know them so that we are not making any mistakes between the moist methods and the dry methods of cooking. So now, what are these dry methods of cooking that are supposed to be listed there? Okay, so here we've got roasting. Okay, roasting. So I've said the dry method of cooking, the heat is being applied directly to the food. Okay, so we've got roasting, roasting, roasting. Okay, then we've got grilling, using the grill, grilling. We've got also baking. All these are under dry methods of cooking. Okay, then again we've got baking, we've already written. We've got pot roasting. Okay, pot roasting. Okay, so there are a lot of different kinds of cooking under dry methods and moist method, but these are the main ones that we know and we are familiar with. Okay, so having done that, we are supposed to know the advantages and disadvantages for each cooking method that we've written here. Okay, so we have to list the examples of each cooking method and their advantages and disadvantages. Okay. Now, why should we know the advantages and disadvantages? Because some of the cooking methods, we are supposed to make sure that when you are cooking your food, you are not supposed to remove all the nutrients from the food. Okay? So, we are supposed to know the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so we are going to list some of the disadvantages for each one of them, or maybe two of them. Okay. Now, we'll look at one method from moist method, which is boiling. Okay. Okay. So boiling, it's a type of cooking where you immerse the food completely in the water, or you dip the food completely in the water. Okay. So now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of boiling? Okay. Of boiling. Okay. So now they're all the same. It is fast. Okay. A lot of, okay. Then again, we say it is fast or quick. It is a quick method. Okay. Then again, we can say boiling, it enhances the flavor, okay, the flavor of the food. Okay, so there are a lot of advantages of boiling method. Now, having listed only three of the advantages, now let us look at the disadvantages of this method. Okay, what are the bad part of this method? Disadvantages of boiling. Okay, so the first one will say most of the nutrients are lost, okay, or are thrown away. Okay, for example, this one, most of the nutrients are lost or are thrown away. For example, some people, they like boiling vegetables, okay? You find that they cut the vegetable, let me say like a vegetable like rape, okay? After boiling, they'll throw that water, then they'll get tomatoes, cooking oil. So that water that they've thrown away, all the nutrients, they've gone, okay? So for them to have those nutrients back, they should use the same nutrient, the same water that they've thrown away to put, or maybe when making gravy, they can use the same water, okay? So that they do not lose the nutrients. Then again, we can say it consumes, okay? The disadvantages, okay? It consumes a lot of heat, okay? Then again, it needs, okay, attention to just leave them there and there, because you find them that they've overcooked. So attention is needed for you when you're using that boiling, okay? So those are the disadvantages that we are following. Now let us look one cooking method from dry. That one was from moist, okay? One cooking method from dry. Advantages of roasting. Okay, so now what are the advantages of roasting? Why is roasting good for our food? Okay, so apply directly to the food, okay? Now we are supposed to look at the advantages. What are the good parts? Roasting, it is good. It is good, okay? It preserves most of the nutrients needed, okay? Right, then the second one, we write most of the nutrients are present in the food, okay? It is also fast, okay? It is also a quick method. Within seconds, your food will be ready, okay? Then having listed those advantages, let us look at the disadvantages, okay? Disadvantages of roasting. So I hope we all know what roasting is, okay? For those of us, maybe you can't understand. Roasting, it's a cooking method whereby you get, let me get a brazier. I put charcoal, then I make sure that it's ready. Then when I get a fish, maybe a piece of meat, then I put it on a wire. That is roasting, okay? So those are the advantages of that cooking method. Now let us look at the disadvantages, okay? The bad part of roasting. Why is it bad? Okay, so the first one, when you are roasting, for example, meat, most of the nutrients that are being removed, okay, because the heat is being direct, it's direct to the food, so most of the nutrients are lost, okay? So most of the nutrients are taken away, okay? Okay. Then again, it needs attention also. It needs attention. Because when you just maybe you concentrate on other things, then you leave your food on the brazier, you'll find that it's something else. Okay, so it needs attention so that you are turning it. If the other side is ready, you turn the other side, then just like that. Okay, so most of the nutrients are lost or are taken away. Now you're supposed to know what nutrients are. I hope you understand what a nutrient is. Okay, in grade 10, remember you learned that a nutrient is a substance that is found in the food. For example, like the vitamins, okay, you find the zinc, the potassium, the calcium, the phosphates, the carbohydrates, and the proteins. All those are nutrients. Let's hope you've understood. Okay, so it needs attention. Okay. All right. Most of we say the texture. Okay. The texture. Texture, it means how rough and smooth something is, okay, or soft, the softness or the roughness of something. So the texture is being affected. Okay, some of the food that we do roast, you find that the texture will change from softness to roughness. Okay, if you didn't maybe added some of the spices that can make the texture of the beef that you are having or the chicken to be soft, to maintain that softness, it can be affected also. Okay, so those are the disadvantages and advantages of dry methods. Okay, so now we've looked at some of the moist methods and the dry methods, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of each method. So next time that we are going to meet, we are going to continue to look at the advantages of dry method, like stewing, steaming, okay, parboiling. Okay, again, we're going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of baking. Okay, baking, grilling, frying. Okay, so for today, we are going to end there. Please remember what we are going to do next time when we meet, so that we follow this topic the way it's supposed to be followed. Okay, so today, in a summary, today we've been looking at the methods of cooking, or cooking methods. Okay, so we've looked at the two types of, or two classes of cooking methods. We've said we've got dry methods and moist methods. Then we've written examples under dry methods and examples on the moist methods. So next time that we're going to meet, we're going to continue from where we've ended today. So thank you for your time, and may God bless you.
afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic.
And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
Good afternoon, class. Good afternoon, class. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression. Expression.
In Zambia and the livestock.
Look at
To our next lesson, we are still going to do a continuation under the books of prime entry. So today we're going to look at the general, so a journal, the word journal. The word journal means a book that records events that happen on a daily basis. So events that happen in that business or in an organization is recorded in the journal. Any events that happen in terms of transactions are recorded in the journal. So a journal means a book that records events of transactions on a daily basis. So unlike the other books of prime entry, we noticed that all the books of prime entry do not carry out any double entry system. So it's the same thing as the journal. The journal does not carry out any double entry system. So in the journal, that's where we record any other transaction that has not been recorded in the other books of prime entry. Remember, the other books of prime entry were the purchases. The other books of prime entry included purchases, daybook, sales, daybook, returns inwards, returns inwards. Inwards, outwards, the cash book, general, journal, and the ones that we're looking at. So these are the examples of the books of prime entry. Remember, the journal is a book where we record examples of transactions that we record. Examples of transactions that we record in the journal. Examples of transactions in the journals are namely, so the first transactions that we record in the journals, the purchase and sale of fixed assets. So purchase and sales of fixed assets are recorded in the journal. Remember, the journal is where we record any other transactions that cannot be recorded in the other books. So this is where those transactions are posted in the journal. So the other transactions that we can post is transferring of items, transfer of items between accounts. So transferring of items that occur between accounts can be registered in the journal. And then correction of errors. Corrections of errors are also posted in the journal. Creation, increase, and decrease of provisions and reserves. These are also posted in the journal. And then our last one, opening of entries. Opening entries. So these are the examples of transactions that we post in the general journal. So how should a journal appear? Remember, just as the other books, day books do not have anything to do with the double entry system, but their layout is going to be of such of a ledger. So how it should appear, how a journal should appear, what should be included? It should include first the items purchased, it should include the account of items, items to be debited and the amount. The other thing is account. That's what the journal should show. Account and the amount. And then the last one, the most important part when you are posting the transactions in the ledger, is a narration. You are supposed to explain that transaction and why it has been posted there. So a statement of the transaction, code, a narrative or narration. So once you are given items or maybe a transaction that has taken place in an organization concerning or the nature of that transaction, after you post them in the general journal, depending on how it has appeared, you must always write a statement of that transaction stating what that transaction was all about. With me here, I have got examples of those transactions and how they should appear in the general journal. So we're going to look at a few. So our first example is going to do with the purchases and sales of fixed assets. So that's the first example we are going to start with. So our question reads, on 4th May 2018, a company bought a machine on credit. A company bought a machine on credit from Major Limited for 10,000. Record the transactions in the journal. Record the transactions in the journal. So the layout of a journal, remember, is that of a ledger. Similar. It has a date, it has the details, it has the folio, it has the debit, and it has the credit side. But it does not carry out the double entry system. This one clearly states to say this is a purchase. It has to be recorded like this. This is a sales, it has to be recorded like this. This is an opening entry, it has to be recorded this way. So journals are straightforward. Remember, I'm repeating my statement to say this is a book where we record transactions that cannot be recorded in the other books. So in this case, we are recording this transaction of that particular machine that was purchased by a company. So this is how the layout should appear. It's important to leave a very huge gap on the details because of the narration that you have to state. So this is our journal proper. So our question reads, on 4th of May 2018, a company bought a machine on credit from Major Limited for 10,000. Record the transaction in the journal. So this is the journal. The book has been opened to record this particular activity. So we first start with the date. It says 4th May. So we are dealing with purchasing of a fixed asset. Purchasing of a fixed asset, a machine was bought. So machine at an amount of 10,000. And then we have to write the details as they are, because we're only dealing with the purchasing of a machine. You will have to integrate both parties that were involved in the details. So from Major Limited, this is where the machine was bought. So it's going to, the amount is going to appear on the credit side. And then you have to write a narration. Bought a machine from Major Limited on credit. A statement on that activity has been given. Even as the accountant is going through the journal proper, he will understand the nature of this transaction by the spelling here wasn't, bought a machine. So by this narration, you have given the accountant clarification on that activity and what took place. So if that item was bought and paid for immediately, there was no need to indicate credit. But then the company will have an idea to say, oh, there's a payment of so much that has to be made on a later date. Remember, credit transaction is where you purchase goods and you pay for them on a later date. So this is a purchase of a fixed item. This is an example of recording a purchase transaction in the journal proper. We can move to our next question. Our next question is dealing with sales. Our next question is dealing with sales. So our next question reads, sold a motor vehicle on 10th June. Sold a motor vehicle on 10th June. Sorry. (2019) for 15 million on credit. For 15 on credit to A. Malunda. Show the journal entry. Show the journal entry. Show the journal entry. So again, we have to look at the question, understand it, and then we record it in the journal proper. So this is sales of a fixed asset. So we go to the date, June 10th. Sold a motor vehicle on June 10th, 2019 for 15,000 on credit to A. Malunda. So, motor vehicle. Remember, we are selling, so automatically we know what it means. When we are selling, we are always going to be on the giving side, known as the credit side, of 15 million. And then A. Malunda received the motor vehicle. When you're done with posting, always remember the narration. Always remember the statement that you put in the journal proper. Sold a motor vehicle to A. Malunda on credit. and you are done with that question, or you are done with that posting. And then that's how you close the journal proper concerning any selling or fixed asset in that company. So the next example we are going to look at is transferring of items between accounts. Transferring of items between accounts. I hope the posting and the question is clear and people are able to see and understand, as well as know where to place what and how the narration is to be written. A narration is a simple statement that is talking about the transaction that has occurred. Remember, we said the journal proper is a book that records events of transactions that occur on a daily basis, day to day, in that financial period or financial year. So it doesn't matter, whatever was sold has to be given a statement for. Without a statement, there's need and proof. Otherwise, the person who would have recorded this would be penalized by the shareholders or the people who need to know about that information. So that's why a statement is always given in the journal proper, because the journal proper does the final calculations at the end of the day. So our next example, we are going to look at transfer of items between accounts. So we're dealing with transfers. Our question reads, Mululu is our data. Mululu is our data, owing us 18,000. Owing us 18,000. As at March 2019, as at 1st March 2019. He is unable to pay his account in cash. He is unable to pay his amount in cash, but offers a motor vehicle in settlement of the date. But offers his motor vehicle in settlement of the debt. The offer is accepted on 15th March. The offer is accepted on 15th March 2019. So this is a transfer of item between accounts. So before there was a business that occurred, Mululu and that company, where they had given each other money and had an agreement to say this money is to be paid on the 1st of March. But then Mululu defaults and fails to pay that amount. So he instead decides to hand over his vehicle in full settlement of the debt. Remember these terms known as debt. So a debtor is a person who is owing you money, okay? And the creditor is somebody you are owing money. In this case, Mululu is our debtor. Mululu is our debtor. So we are going to record the transactions. Always keep note of the dates. It further goes on to read to say the offer is accepted on 15th March 2019. So we are going to use the day when Mululu actually gave out his motor vehicle in full settlement of the debt that he was owing. So we are going to write 15th March, not 1st March, because the activity actually took place on the 15th of March. So he is unable to pay his amount in cash, but offers his motor vehicle in settlement of the debt. So motor vehicle why that money was brought in, to why that vehicle was brought in instead of the money. So acceptance of motor vehicle in full settlement of the debt. And you have explained why that has happened. Such transactions cannot be recorded either in the sales, in the purchases, or any other books of prime entry. This is why such transactions are posted in the journal proper, where you are even given a space to explain why that transaction has been carried out that way. In this case, Mululu and the company. So because this has happened, because of the money that was given out to Mululu, either via the cash account or the bank account, he has failed to return back the money. So by so doing, you cannot write a statement in the purchases daybook or the sales daybook. That is not possible. Only the journal proper gives you a platform to explain the nature of that transaction. Why was the motor vehicle paid instead of cash? So this is where now you have to explain the statement or the nature of that activity, and you write it in written. The accountant, the shareholders, or whoever is in how you settle such a transaction. Once you record a transaction like this, you are good to go, and the business of the day is dealt with. So we move to the other one. We move to our other question. We are still under transfers. Transfer of items between accounts. So there was a transferring of item between this account, which involved money and a motor vehicle. So our other question reads, our day Evanji had his business taken over by K1. Had his business taken over by K1 on 7th of July. On the 7th of July 2019. K1 is now to pay the debt owed by Evanji. K1 is now to pay the debt owed by Evanji $5,000. Okay, so we have to understand the question. Remember, we're still under transfers. We are done with the purchases and sales of fixed assets, which you record. We're not doing with transfers. We said transfers. This is where items being transferred between accounts are to be recorded and given a clear statement. So now our question reads, our data Evanji had his business taken over by K1 on the 7th of July 2019. K1 is now to pay the debt owed by Evanji $5,000. 100,000. So K1 has taken over Vanji's business, including the debt. Whatever that business had, the problems, the success has now been taken over by K1. So we start posting these transactions. So firstly and always the date, 7th July. So now here, since this debt that Vanji was owing us is now being taken care of K1, we are supposed to indicate how the transferring of items has been done between these two accounts. So first it's K1. K1 is taking over. So K1 receives all the responsibilities that that business has. So K1 receives everything, including the debt that Vanji is owing us. And then Vanji loses out everything, including the problems. He gives them over to K1. So, as we have seen how that thing has been played out like that. So, the statement here is going to state transfer of debt from Vanji to K1, Wana's account. And that's your statement. Transfer of debt from Vanji's account to K1's account. Once you have written your narrative, you close that day of activities and you know what you are dealing with. If there was a book of accounts that was opened between the business and Vanji, that book of account is going to be cleared off with A1 and with this journal proper, giving clarification to the accountant. Even as a balance up at the end of that financial period or week or year, this is how they are going to balance off, by looking at the corrections done, the narratives done, and whatever activity that was taking place. So our today's topic, we looked at the journal proper or general journal, where we record any other transaction that cannot be recorded in the other books. The other books do not give us a provision to explain our statements. It does not give us the provision to correct. It does not give us the provision to transfer items from account to account. But the journal proper gives us this opportunity. Remember always, the journal proper doesn't have anything to do with double entry system. It only states the items to be debited and the items to be credited at the same time. Afterwards, after this is done, we are going to look at how we post these transactions into the general journal. So next time we meet, we are going to look at how we are going to post these transactions in the general ledger. If there are any questions, we can have them now. Okay, so we come to the end of our lesson. Thank you.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.
Good afternoon, class. And these are examples of crops that we grow in Zambia and the livestock.
Look at our geographic expression.